So every once in a while, I'll get the same comment on one of my videos. Who is this guy? He came out of virtually nowhere, he's got pretty good production quality, and it seems like he leans somewhat center-left. Is he a Democratic Party operative? Spoiler alert, no, but I'm flattered you think I'm all that. Are there actually content creators out there being paid to support certain policy positions? If so, who are these people? Where do they join these groups? And how much are they being paid? Not that I'd ever join one, but I'm curious. As I was reading up on all this, a bombshell article came out about just this. It uncovers a massive amount of dark money being injected into the influencer space, funded by some powerful political interests. Some content creators are allegedly being paid up to $8,000 a month for seemingly very little in return. There doesn't seem to have been a single creator involved that disclosed to their audience they were being paid by this group. In fact, the article about this whole situation claims they signed contracts that limited how much they're able to say about their involvement. And even after this article came out, it doesn't look like they're stopping anytime soon. This is a story about journalism. The importance of journalistic ethics and standards that have been cultivated over the decades, how they might be going away, and what we can do to change that. I actually got to sit down with the author of the piece, Taylor Lorenz, to figure out exactly what she uncovered and why it's such a big deal. Hi, Taylor.
Hi, great to chat.
I was hoping you could, just for my audience here, maybe explain a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Sure. I'm a journalist and content creator, and I cover technology and online culture. Sort of a lot of what I'm known for is writing about the attention economy and influencer culture.
So I got this important email a few weeks ago. It's an acceptance into a journalism program, and to be honest, I've been really on the fence about accepting it. On the one hand, I think I'm doing journalism, right? At least some form of it. I think. Because my videos on the state of the Democratic and Republican parties going into 2028 have a combined total of, I want to say, almost 2 million views, not to brag. So if this is journalism and I am reaching a larger audience, I want to know how to do it correctly, right? On the other hand, it's pretty expensive and it would take time away that I would be putting into videos like this. So I know I'm at least doing better than them, and maybe that's enough. Let's take a moment to get to the article in question. It centers on a nonprofit called Chorus. I just would love if you could kind of give a very brief overview as far as what you uncovered.
For over a decade, I've written about a lot of political influence operations on the internet, mostly among the right and the Republicans and kind of the stuff that they do. But this recent Wired story was essentially about a group of 90 influencers who participated in a dark money political funding scheme where influencers were taking thousands of dollars a month from this liberal dark money group. And as part of this broader effort to fix the democratic messaging problem on the internet. I wrote about this organization, Chorus, which works in conjunction with the 1630 Fund, this liberal dark money group, to run this secretive program. And this secret program is something where they're paying influencers thousands of dollars a month, having them attend daily messaging check-ins. They had restrictions on some of their content, and they were being paid. Basically, it was a paid political influence operations. Basically, it was a bunch of Democratic influencers taking dark money as part of a political scheme and not disclosing it. And some of those people call themselves journalists on the internet.
Lorenz received contracts and internal materials given to creators in the program and found several odd stipulations and requirements. I think the contract that members were asked to sign is key here. According to a copy Lorenz obtained, creators must funnel all bookings with lawmakers and political leaders through Chorus, and they have to loop Chorus in on any independently organized engagements with government officials or political leaders. The contract allegedly gives Chorus the ability to force creators to remove or correct content at the organization's discretion. It also forbids creators from disclosing the identity of any funder, and in general, from publicizing their relationship with Chorus without prior consent. Lorenz also reports that one member of the cohort was told their lawyers could not redline the contract, which meant there was no room for negotiation, and that creators were given only days to sign. Now, this isn't to say that every member received the exact same document, and some creators have since said the organization never reviewed or approved their content before posting. But asking any creator to accept these terms in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment is, to put it lightly, highly concerning and raises real ethics questions, especially if money is involved. So how much money are we talking about? Lorenz sources say that since the program kicked off the other month, more than 90 influencers with roughly 13 million followers collectively were approved, and that offers ranged from about $250 to $8,000 per month. I think that's insane. The only thing I've ever asked from my boss, you guys, is to like and subscribe. Now, it's also standard practice in stories like this to seek comment from the subjects. Not everyone does it, but Taylor did. In this case, she said Chorus did not provide comment before publication, but after the story ran, a lawyer working with Chorus sent a screenshot from a presentation with talking points for members who wanted to discuss Chorus publicly. He also maintained that, quote, creators are free to work with other groups or take on other partnerships outside the Chorus program and say whatever they want as part of that work or on their own. He did not ask for any corrections about the contract or any other materials, which implies Chorus has the power to ask otherwise. Lorenz has said this is common, where subjects withhold comment pre-publication and then push for post-publication inclusions that can read like corrections, even though they're not. And we're recording. Have you guys heard about Hype? This new YouTube feature that came out? Sorry, I'm still setting up the set for the interview with Taylor when I'm recording this. I'm trying to figure out how this light's gonna work, but anyway, yeah, have you heard of Hype? It's some new feature on YouTube. I remember hearing about it a little while ago. Maybe you guys can tell me a little bit more about it in the comments. But from my understanding of it, if a channel's under a certain size, you can choose to hype the video and you get 3 hypes per week. Now I am confident that this video is gonna be very interesting, but it's a little dense. So I hate to ask, but if you guys could use one of your hypes on this video, I wanna see how it does and if it actually it helps the video at all. I'm still a small channel and I'm still trying to figure things out, so I would very much appreciate it. All right, let's get on with it. Something that I feel is important for people who are just hearing about this for the first time, I think you'd agree here, is the definition of dark money specifically.
It's a group, usually a 501c4, but it's a group that raises money that does not have to disclose their donors, and they use that money for political purposes. And I think that using the money for political purposes is a really key element of this, because tons of nonprofits don't have to disclose their donors, but they're not influencing elections and using that money for political purposes. So dark money groups really sprang up beginning in 2010 with this Supreme Court ruling called Citizens United, and a sort of a DC Circuit ruling around that time too. It was Speech Now Speech Now versus, I can't remember who they were fighting against, but basically both of these created this system where dark money groups, or these kind of mysterious, nonprofit structures or organizations, could raise massive amounts of money and then fund super PACs. So previously, super PACs weren't really a thing prior to Citizens United. And so dark money groups have become incredibly powerful throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s because they're able to fund, they're the primary funding mechanism for all of these political schemes involving super PACs.
It's also important to note that the 1630 Fund is not unique in how it sources funding. According to findings from the Brennan Center for the most recent election cycle, shell companies and 501c nonprofits that did not disclose their funding gave $1.3 billion to super PACs. That's more than the prior 2 election cycles combined. This has unquestionably been fueled by the decision from the Supreme Court that Taylor mentioned, Citizens United versus the FEC. The ruling held that laws restricting independent political spending by corporations and unions are unconstitutional under the First Amendment. This has led to tons of political spending in secret. And it's eroded accountability and Americans' trust in the political process. And the trend towards secrecy is likely to continue in future elections, unless Congress takes actions to require the disclosure of large political donations and expenditures. Okay, so at this point you're probably wondering, is there anything reasonable that could possibly get done by elected officials to change things? Well, the simplest fix would be to pass a new amendment to the Constitution. That way you could get over the Supreme Court's decision. But getting 2/3 of the House and the Senate, as well as 3/4 of states on board, is a monumental ask, especially when many members of both parties benefit from the current system. But there are other paths to limit this money. While the Citizens United ruling struck down restrictions on independent spending, it upheld disclosure requirements. Congress could pass a new law to make sure all large campaign donations are publicly revealed, which would get rid of the dark money we've been talking about. The Disclose Act is a bill that was introduced with exactly this goal. Since 2010, it has been reintroduced in Congress every term by Democratic lawmakers, but has repeatedly been filibustered by Republicans in the Senate. Democrats can get this passed once they get power again. I made a whole video talking about how to get rid of the filibuster in the future. You can watch the video up here. I highly recommend it. So what I'm trying to wrap my head around is how any of this is legal. As you probably know, when you have to deal with a brand as an influencer to promote a VPN or something, you have to disclose that it's a paid partnership. I'm sure you've seen this with the tags like includes paid promotion on YouTube and the paid partnership tag on Instagram, but the same rules don't apply to political partnerships. Why is that? Now, the lawyer for Chorus I mentioned earlier was allegedly recorded on a Zoom call by one of Taylor Lorenz's sources saying the following in regards to this situation. Quote, "It gives us the ability to raise money from donors. It also, with this structure, it avoids a lot of the public disclosure or public disclaimers, paid for by blah, 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 that you see on political ads. We don't need to deal with any of that. Your names aren't showing up on, reports filed with the FEC. He brought up the FEC there, and that makes me wonder, what is their policy when it comes to this kind of stuff? Citizens United has had this huge effect on the last 15 years of politics. And it makes me wonder, where else outside of Congress things can change, and specifically regarding your article regarding this situation with online creators, disclosure requirements for political spending. That's the FEC, right?
It is the FEC, and the FEC has been so defanged over the years. They cannot really do that much. That basically they're so ineffective. And the problem with this whole political media ecosystem is that there's no sort of norms around transparency, and there's no requirements. And these organizations on the right have exploited that for years. And now, Democrats always sort of fought that and argued for transparency, but now Democrats also don't want transparency. So you have two sides of the political spectrum, neither of which want any sort of transparency, and it's leading to complete erosion of trust in our political environment, and especially our political media environment. I will say I reached out to every single media ethics person that I could find to see if there was anyone that would defend this, and I could not find one.
Really? That's
what is
huge.
It's indefensible. Because what you're doing is you are misleading the public. You are misleading the public about the nature of your content. You are participating in a political influence scheme while presenting yourself as neutral without letting your audience know that. And that is just fundamentally that's very anti-journalistic, and it erodes trust in democracy, and it erodes trust in our media environment.
According to the Washington Post, the FEC has considered requiring greater transparency about political funds being channeled to online creators, but in 2023, they decided not to follow through. Sean Cooksey, the FEC's Republican chair, said in an interview at the time, quote, "Political speech is entitled to a higher level of protection under the First Amendment than commercial speech. I 100% reject the characterization that keeping pace with technology means regulating technology more." So, going into the 2024 election cycle, there was no federal requirement for influencers to disclose whether their videos were originally being paid for by politicians or super PACs. Critics have argued that this allows political groups to manipulate public opinion, and that federal election rules have failed to keep pace with the way social media has transformed campaigning. In this last campaign cycle, political ad brokers' instructions to influencers have often been targeted and oddly direct. 4 days after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, the liberal super PAC Priorities USA hosted an urgent briefing with its roster of online personalities. They were instructing them on ways to craft memes and videos to help their followers get to know and promote Kamala Harris. The Harris campaign also paid the social media firm Good Influence, a for-profit firm with ties to Chorus and People's First Marketing, more than $500,000 as of September 2024. As for the Trump campaign, the Washington Post found that a person familiar with the strategy claimed they did not directly pay influencers for content. However, it did provide access to rallies and gives creators swag, like hats and t-shirts. So, back to the article. Chorus is described in the contracts as a project of the 1630 Fund. The organization was founded in 2009 as a liberal response to the conservative dark money groups and organizations like the Koch network, and has become a huge player in elections since then. The Atlantic called the 1630 Fund, quote, "the indisputable heavyweight of Democratic dark money," noting that it was the second largest super PAC donor in 2020, donating $61 million of, quote, "effectively untraceable money to progressive causes." Now, according to its tax filing, just 4 donors accounted for close to 2/3 of the fund's revenue in 2023. The largest donors gave the group $50.5 million, with others donating $31.4 million, $21.8 million, and $13.6 million. Now, it's important to know we do not know who these people are that gave this money. Now, this is not to say that every liberal influencer group operates this way. Crooked Media, for example, is an extremely popular space on the left. Now, it's a for-profit company, which gives them a completely different motivation for the type of content they create. They bring in money from sponsorships and merchandise and subscriptions. So there really isn't the same need for dark money to come in that could compromise their independence. Okay. Now, I feel like I got a fuller scope of this whole situation after I watched the responses from the creators involved. So I set up this screen so we could hear a little bit from Brian Tyler Cohen, a co-founder of Chorus. Now, if you don't know, Brian is a very successful progressive YouTuber. He's a podcast host, political commentator. Now, his video is only 5 minutes in length, and I'm only picking out a couple points here, so I strongly urge you to check it out for yourself if you think I'm misrepresenting the points being made. Anyway, let's get into it.
Chorus does not pay creators for content, does not tell them what to say, does not control who they talk to or work with, and there is absolutely nothing in the contract that could even be reasonably interpreted to say that we do. Period. Full stop. I don't know a single creator who would willfully sign up for a program that would tell them what they can or can't say. That's not what this program is. We pay people to show up to workshops and technical trainings to optimize their content online.
The argument many are making for why this is such a messed up situation is that smaller creators very well might rely on the money they're receiving. Up to $8,000 a month, remember? That's a lot of money for a small creator. Now, if they're considering saying something or endorsing something that they think the program doesn't agree with, they hypothetically won't even run the risk of saying it if the downside is no longer receiving money from them, regardless of the explicit rules being given or not given from Chorus. Now, again, I have to note that my deductions are contingent on the reporting of how Chorus works from the Wired article, which at the time of recording has not issued any corrections. Okay, let's get on to the second point.
On the literal first day of the program, it was made clear to all of the creators in our kickoff session that they were absolutely free to talk about Chorus, and we immediately followed up to confirm that in writing.
Brian's right here. There are noted cases of creators mentioning that they joined the program well before the article came out. But what I'd argue is more important is the fact that we haven't been able to find any instance of a single creator that disclosed to their audience that they were receiving payments. In your reporting, were there any instances that you found of a single creator disclosing that there was a financial tie to Chorus before?
They didn't. No. It's the 1630 fund is the money. The Chorus is just Chorus is a project of the 1630 fund.
Sure.
And you'll note even now they're not mentioning 1630 fund. They'll be like, I was in Chorus. Everyone always knew I was in Chorus. It's like, yeah, everyone knew. Chorus itself has been this like public sort of like shell organization. That they got a whole profile in the New York Times when they launched. The point is that you didn't disclose you were taking money from this dark money group and that you were part of this political influence scheme. So yeah, no, none of them. No, not one.
Okay, last point.
The right has been doing this for years, and the left needs to catch up. That's why we're doing this with Chorus.
I think we should take a deeper look at this point. The right-wing media ecosystem has examples of this with companies like, with organizations like Turning Point USA.
Turning Point's public. The Republicans ones are public. So Turning Point USA, the influencers in that program have it in their Instagram bio. Turning Point USA has massive public, huge events like America Fest or whatever, right? Where they bring all the influencers together. Like, PragerU has an influencer program, right? Like that is public. That's in people's bios. They're proud of it. They're proud. There's no reason why Chorus couldn't replicate something like that on the right. Like they could say like, hey guys, we're all excited to be part of this network. Make sure you put Chorus in your bio and make sure that you disclose that you're receiving money from this dark money group. Like they could have done that. But they still, even to this day, don't want any transparency on their program. And it makes me wonder why.
Okay, so after this conversation, I wanted to dive a little deeper on Turning Point. And I feel like I should note now, this is the organization started by Charlie Kirk. I'm sure it's old news by the time this posts, but as I'm filming this, he was killed this afternoon. We're going to be talking about the organization, not him himself. And as of right now, as I'm filming, there isn't much to say. Anyways, it seems like there are two groups. There's Turning Point USA, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and Turning Point Action, which is a separate 501c4 group. Now, the second group is an advocacy model that deals more with funding political campaigns. Turning Point USA publicly advertises ambassador and influencer tracks. They offer travel stipends to events, and they run separate activism grants for campus programs. Now, the reporting indicates that the ambassadors don't draw a salary, but they do gain access, travel help, networking, and other stuff to grow their brands. On the other hand, as Taylor alluded to, Turning Action has paid people for online campaigns specifically. In 2020, reporting showed that Turning Point Action funded a coordinated social post in an effort by teens that the platforms later penalized. But coming back to the main point, it seems that the value for the most part with Turning Point is access travel help, merch, the ecosystem, and the chance to get a bigger platform. So yes, there is a version of what Chorus is doing on the right, but does this mean what they're doing is right? Like, just something that concerns me about Chorus is the repeat monthly check coming in
payments.
the
Yeah,
mail.
you're on the payroll for this. You're on the payroll. I mean, I think it's confusing. I think something that's kind of similar is the influence operation that Tim Pool and Benny Johnson were part of, where that was actually private until the Department of Justice exposed this scheme where basically actually Russian money, like put through like this Russian media company, was being funneled to fund a bunch of right-wing influencers here, including Tim Pool and Benny Johnson, where they were receiving actually up to $100,000 a month, which is obscene. And it was also dark money. They didn't know where it was from. They continue to claim, oh, we didn't know the origin of it, whatever. But they were also on like a monthly stipend that was secret.
Okay, I want to build on this a little bit. In September 2024, the Justice Department charged 2 employees of RT, a Russian state-controlled outlet, with conspiring to violate something called FARA. This is the Foreign Agents Registration Act. They were charged with laundering money by covertly directing nearly $10 million to a Tennessee media company that produced online videos. Now, the indictment doesn't name the company, but reporting shows that the details match Tenet Media. The Department of Justice says the commentators who worked with the company didn't know the money traced back to RT. Benny Johnson and Tim Pool both said they were victims of this alleged scheme. Now, I'm not raising this point just to dismiss the validity of a right-wing media ecosystem. I'm highlighting why disclosure standards matter. When undisclosed money moves through creator networks, you risk building propaganda pipelines that look like normal creator content to most people. All this kind of makes me wonder if there is a version of Chorus that exists in the sort of left-leaning media ecosystem that is genuinely effective, that is above board, that works with creators.
I think there are lots of ways that this program could be both more ethical and also more effective. Number one is transparency. Like they should have announced, they should have put a press release out saying like, hey, we're excited to announce this new funding program for creators. When they choose the people who successfully received, access into the program, they should have another announcement saying, hey guys, here's who's in the program. And those content creators should announce that as well on their channels and say like, I'm excited to be part of this program. This program is aimed at furthering this political agenda that I align with. And here's what it entails. Here's the restrictions that I agreed to and that I didn't agree to. Or, what Chorus could also do in the 1630 fund is also just not make them have editorial restrictions. They should have complete and total editorial freedom in every single sense of the word, and not have to sign any of these like weird contracts. I think if they had done that, it wouldn't be a news story. And I actually think that they would have gotten, I think, a lot of support, because I think the Democrats do want some sort of counter to the right-wing media ecosystem. They just want it to be transparent and equal.
Like what should we do? I'm someone who's kind of I'm someone who's trying to get into this, and everything just seems so fuzzy. I don't know what things that I do are commentary, what things are journalism, and I want to do the right thing. Should creators go to journalism school?
No, don't waste your money on journalism school. You don't need to go to journalism school.
Okay.
I think what you need to do is well, first of all, I do think that what would be helpful is some of these more journalistic institutions to set up programs that would educate content creators on basic journalism facts. In the meantime, I think for content creators, it's just about being transparent with your audience. I mean, like, look, there is no such thing as objectivity, right? Like, I'm a journalist. I write my journalistic work. It's fact-checked. It doesn't have my opinion in it. But somebody asks me about my story, I'm going to give commentary on it. And I'm going to make it clear, like, I'm giving commentary on this. Like, here's what my reporting says, and here's what I think about it. And I think that that's good too. I think it's good to like kind of draw those distinctions and be like, here's a reported piece of content. Here's more of my commentary content, and help people sort of understand those boundaries between those things. But just be open. Like, no one's perfect. I don't think anyone expects all of these content creators to like, be abiding by like the strictest Wall Street Journal, investigative reporter or like editorial standards. But I do think that misleading your audience is never good, no matter what kind of content you make. And the more open and transparent you can be, the better.
Yeah. It's I'm hoping it's a foam rises to the top kind of situation. I hope long term, some of these creators, smaller creators who are still pretty new at this, who have responded kind of aggressively with this whole Quora situation that are involved. I hope we can all kind of learn to do exactly what you're saying and just be open. And if we're wrong about something, we own up to it when we're wrong about it.
Well, that's another thing that I want to say too, is like, I've talked to so many content creators over the years that have made mistakes and how they've handled it. And your audience will forgive you if you make a correction. Like it actually builds trust to do that. When you say like, hey, I fucked up here, or I got something wrong. Like, yeah, people that aren't your audience might like shit on you or something. But like over time, it means like people trust that you are going to tell the truth and that you're going to correct something if something's wrong. So it's valuable for yourself, like if nothing else. And I'm really scared because of the reactions to this story that we're going in the opposite direction, where the content creators in this story, especially the younger ones, they seem to be tripling down and saying, I don't owe transparency to anyone. I can do whatever I want. I'm here to make money. I don't care about journalistic ethics. By the way, Taylor Lorenz is fake news. Like, that is something that I exclusively heard from far-right MAGA influencers in 2016. And the fact that mainstream corporate Democrat people are saying it in 2025 is really concerning.
Well, I hope that there's a lot of people out there, people who responded to the story similar to how I responded to it, which is the fact that there haven't been any corrections issued to Wire. The fact that you have receipts, you have people on background, you have all these things backing up what you're saying that have not been disputed through the channels that organizations like Chorus know to go through if they are incorrect. The fact that none of that has happened, I think it lends a credibility to your side that the other side can only say nah to. Mm-hmm. And that gives me hope that people are seeing that. And I hope it's just an example and maybe inspiration for people to maybe eat their vegetables a little bit more with what they're watching online. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I think that's all I have as far as questions go.
Awesome. No, totally. I'm so happy to chat. And
Testing. I've been trying to work through my personal takeaway all day. And the more time I spend on it, I find my frustrations all come back to funding and disclosure. Creators have talked about how the program had seminars that help them improve their production quality and understandings on how to use the platforms they're posting on. As someone who's still pretty new to all this, I totally get that appeal, and I don't think it's a bad argument being made in bad faith. If Chorus was funded by an organization that disclosed the source of their funding, and the creators had to make it clear they were receiving money from them, you could really see the argument for something like this existing at scale. Hell, depending on who's funding it, it might even be something I'd look into. There's tons of journalistic grants like this out there. Connecting with other creators and learning these skills is super important and valuable. And I commend the people involved who actually genuinely set out to do that. But you can't fund it with dark money. Again, it appears to me that the creators named in the article that have acknowledged they are involved are well-meaning, aspiring independent journalists and influencers. I do believe their claim that the Chorus group has no editorial control on any of the content they put out. I mean, the program has only been around a couple months, and there's no Democratic Party line to keep people on yet. Now, some of these creators have been in the public eye for decades, and most likely make such an insane amount of money outside the program that even the maximum $8,000 a month wouldn't be worth it to compromise their brand. But that doesn't mean I think what's going on here is right. And when we're talking about influence over content, the big creators are not concerned for being compromised. They could walk away if they were being asked to do something wrong. But the smaller creator that relies on the money from the program as a primary source of income, if in 2029 they disagree with a future Democratic administration on policy, when the rest of the cohort is in line with it, will they be willing to publicly voice their opposition if it means that they won't be invited back to the program? It's a form of soft power that, intended or not, has an insane amount of influence over small creators. Small creators like me. I don't want you guys to ever wonder or worry if my positions on any policy are influenced by secret money or something. If I ever join any kind of grant program, cohort, whatever, rest assured, I would clearly disclose that to you and you would know about it. It looks like the online media influencer space is diving into some murky waters, and I'll do everything I can to be a place you can come to for accurate coverage. I don't think there's any journalism program that's gonna teach you how to be honest. That's what you guys are for.